Title: The Global Clash of Titans. In a world not unlike our own, the leaders of the world weren't just powerful political figures. They were superheroes, each possessing unique abilities honed through years of mysterious training and strange circumstances. As the tensions between nations escalated, so did the stakes of global diplomacy. And now, a conflict of monumental proportions was about to unfold. Chapter 1: The Global Summit. It was supposed to be a simple summit in Geneva, a place where world leaders gathered to negotiate climate policies and trade agreements. But when the leaders of the United States, France, Russia, China, and several other countries arrived, they knew that nothing would be as simple as it seemed. Among them stood President Donald Trump, known for his larger-than-life personality and his ability to manipulate the media. But now, his powers were something far beyond words. With the power of the Golden Surge, he could summon a powerful aura of golden energy that granted him super strength, enhanced durability, and the ability to create massive shockwaves with his fists. Across from him stood President Emmanuel Macron of France, a seemingly calm leader with a sharp wit. His power, Le Tempête, allowed him to control the winds and the weather. He could summon violent storms, tornadoes, and even create gusts of wind powerful enough to disarm his opponents. Behind him, Prime Minister Boris Johnson of the United Kingdom wielded the power of the Iron Dominion, a suit of living armor that granted him the ability to manipulate metal and control mechanical devices. He could call on an army of drones or transform everyday objects into deadly weapons. To the left, President Vladimir Putin of Russia stood stoically, his ice-smooth eyes glowing with an aura of cold power. His ability, Siberian Fury, allowed him to manipulate ice and snow, freezing enemies in place, or creating massive ice constructs at will. His strength in the cold was unrivaled, and his calm demeanor masked a dangerous warrior. And then there was President Xi Jinping of China, who had a power known as the Eternal Dragon. With a single breath, he could summon ethereal, energy-based dragons to fight at his side, their energy capable of disintegrating anything they touched. His mastery over strategy and ancient techniques made him an opponent to be feared. Chapter 2: The Betrayal. The world had been teetering on the edge of war, and as the leaders gathered in Geneva, their true mission was far more sinister than anyone knew. The summit was actually a covert meeting, where the super-powered leaders were secretly conspiring to determine who would control the future of the world. Trump, however, had caught wind of the plot. He had his suspicions that Macron, Putin, and Xi were planning to use their powers to seize control. He wasn't one to sit back when things got messy, and the time for diplomacy was over. As the final speech began, Trump stood up abruptly and slammed his fist on the table. The room shook as a wave of golden energy erupted from his body, sending papers flying and sending a shockwave through the floor. "I know what you're all up to," Trump boomed, his voice filled with authority. "You think you can control the world with your powers, but you're wrong. This is America's time. I'm taking back what's ours." The other leaders turned, their eyes narrowing. "Mr. Trump, do not make this worse," Macron said, summoning a gust of wind that caused the chandeliers to sway ominously. "You do not know the forces you are challenging." But Trump wasn't listening. With a mighty roar, he released a barrage of golden energy blasts that struck the walls and cracked the ceiling. The battle had begun. Chapter 3: The Battle of the Century. As soon as the first blow was struck, the entire room transformed into a battleground. Macron called forth a mighty tornado, ripping through the summit hall, sending debris flying in every direction. Trump's golden shield deflected the winds, but the storm was relentless. "Nice try, Macron," Trump sneered, his golden aura glowing brighter as he charged forward with superhuman speed. He landed a massive punch that sent the French president flying across the room. But Macron wasn't finished. With a flick of his wrist, he summoned a thunderstorm that crackled with lightning, the bolt striking Trump's aura with blinding intensity. However, Trump stood firm, his energy absorbing the blows as his aura surged back, stronger than before. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson unleashed his Iron Dominion suit. The metallic armor stretched and expanded as he sent a barrage of drone-like machines to harass Trump and Macron, their sharp claws aimed at the two heroes. Trump blasted through the machines with a burst of energy, but the constant onslaught distracted him long enough for Macron to create a powerful wind blast, sending him flying back. On the other side of the room, Putin raised his hands, and the temperature plummeted. Frost spread across the walls, and massive spikes of ice shot up from the floor, freezing anything in their path. His icy minions formed from the floor and attacked, their jagged, frozen limbs trying to capture the other leaders. "Do not underestimate Russia's power," Putin said coldly, his icy gaze piercing through the chaos. But Trump, with his unyielding confidence, wasn't about to back down. He summoned a huge shockwave of golden energy, shattering the ice constructs around him and sending Putin into the air, where Macron quickly whipped up a tornado to contain him. Just when it seemed like the battle might turn in favor of Trump, Xi Jinping took action. With a low chant, he summoned his dragons, their ethereal bodies glowing with crackling energy. They soared through the air, breathing fire and energy blasts at the combatants below. "You cannot win against the dragon," he declared, his voice calm yet full of power. But Trump wasn't finished. He unleashed the Golden Surge at full force, summoning a massive tidal wave of energy that obliterated the dragons one by one. In the aftermath, Trump stood tall, drenched in the fiery glow of his energy. Chapter 4: The Ultimate Showdown. The room was a war zone. The walls were torn, the ceiling cracked, and the leaders were battered and bruised, but none would surrender. Each had their own motivations for wanting to control the world's destiny. In the final moment of the battle, Trump locked eyes with Macron. The two stood across the room from one another, each surrounded by the remnants of their powers. The storm clouds above rumbled ominously as Macron summoned a violent gust of wind, while Trump called upon the full force of his golden energy. With a shout, Trump charged forward, breaking through the windstorm with sheer willpower. He delivered a devastating punch, knocking Macron back into the walls. At the same time, Xi's dragons reappeared, but Trump, now completely fueled by his ultimate energy, unleashed a final, world-shaking blast that sent all of his enemies flying. When the dust settled, Trump stood alone amidst the destruction, his golden aura flickering with the remnants of his power. The other leaders, weary and defeated, knew that they had underestimated him. "I told you," Trump said, his voice echoing in the ruined hall. "This is America's time, and no one is going to take it from me." Epilogue: The New Order. In the aftermath, the world would change. Trump emerged as the uncontested global leader, having proven that even the mightiest of powers were no match for the strength of his will. But the other leaders, bruised and humiliated, retreated to regroup, knowing that the battle for global dominance was far from over. For now, the world would follow Trump's leadership, but the next battle of politics and superpowers was already looming on the horizon.